Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic, let's do it. What is the scariest thing that has ever happened to you? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
I stepped in a river not realizing how deep it was. I was swept off my feet in the current. I had to swim for my life. I was in the North Cascade Mountains. 0 cell reception. I was alone. I, dumbly, didn't tell anyone ahead of time the area I would be in. In my panic in the rushing water, I swam to the bank of the river opposite from where I had started. No getting back in that water. I had to hike 2 hours up the riverbank, through backcountry, to find the next actual river crossing. Then I had to hike back to my car another 2 hours. And it took another 30 minutes of driving before I had cell signal again to even think about letting someone know what had happened to me. That was the day I decided I liked living. My dumb teenage self, my cousin, and best friend at the time were bored out of our minds in our small town and decided to explore an old abandoned warehouse. This place was weird, like they just left one day with all the stuff still there. Lots of materials and parts. There were different floors, and we were on the second floor in what looked like an inventory room. There were so many shelves all stacked with a bunch of different stuff, and all over the floor was plastic pieces. We were looking around when all of a sudden we heard a lot of crunching, like someone was running on the plastic pieces. My friend started laughing hysterically, and I thought she was trying to scare me. I told her to knock it off, and she said that it wasn't her, and she was laughing because she was genuinely scared that we weren't alone. My cousin and I started to freak out when we continued to hear more and more of the running around. We tried to be quiet as we turned back the way we came, but then we heard clear as day, "I hear you," and we started panicking at this point. We were scrambling to get out of there when we hear, "I see you too." We bolted, ran as fast as we could out of there, and back to my car. We never saw who or what was in there with us, but it definitely taught us to never go exploring like that again. Looking back now, it was probably a squatter who just wanted us idiotic teenagers out of their shelter. But in the moment, we thought we were going to be murdered. As a teen before cell phones, a very drunken older guy followed me to a convenience store. I didn't realize how close he was until he started grabbing me and managed to squeeze my breasts. I somehow managed to get away and run into the store. Stayed in the store where the clerk could see me and waited in eyeshot of the clerk until dude walked far, far away. Store is long gone now, and I hope the clerk is living a good life. Guy saved me from serious harm. I was about 19 or 20 and my mom was driving us somewhere one morning when she had a seizure. She'd had a smaller one for a few months prior, but she was able to tell me when they were about to happen, if I couldn't tell myself, and she was mostly conscious during those. By the time this happened, they'd seemingly went away and weren't severe when they did happen. But she was driving me to work and turned back around on the road for some reason. I asked her why did she turn, and I can't remember what she said, but she sounded confused. I sat for a moment wondering what was happening. Did we forget something at home? And as I was thinking, seconds later, she veered onto the wrong side of the road toward oncoming traffic. I looked over, and she was having a full-blown seizure, and I immediately panicked. She was going about 55 to 60 miles per hour, again, on the wrong side of the road, at a spot I could not bring us back over. Immediately I took control of the wheel though, and eventually decided it was more important in that moment I control the vehicle than try to help. I couldn't help her right then, and I had to make sure we didn't crash. I don't remember even thinking about the other cars. They moved out of the way, I guess. I remember trying to scoot over and put my feet on the brake, but the way she was positioned, I couldn't reach it. I took the keys out of the ignition. It didn't slow us down, but at least she couldn't accelerate. I couldn't put her foot off the gas pedal either because she was so stiff. She started drooling and her face changed colors. I started screaming for her to stop, to wake up, saying, "Hey, hey, hey," like a parrot, trying to get her to snap out of it, knowing that's not how it worked. But again, during her previous ones, she could all communicate at best. Sometimes I'd just scream. I think to let the stress out. I remember running over some sort of median or something to try to slow down. But it didn't work. And later, we found out I popped a tire doing that. We kept going and going because there was a guardrail next to us with a steep drop-off. So I had to stay on the road until we reached a part where I could veer us into a path of grass. The railing was still there, and originally I'd planned to try and scrape the vehicle against it to slow us down, but thankfully the grass slowed us to a stop. The theory continues, but that's what happened while we were on the road and how I could stop the vehicle. And I'll also mention I'd barely driven at this point, but all growing up, my mom taught me what to do if the driver became incapacitated. And then the negative teaching helped me keep us safe. I'm an RN, and because of a careless, reckless doctor, I got stuck with a bloody needle. We sent all the appropriate blood work on the patient and myself. I got a call the next day and was told the patient's HIV test was positive. I thought I was going to die. The doctor is an asshole and refused to call the patient and inform them and ask for more blood work to be drawn. I was on HIV meds for 6 weeks until someone did call the patient and they came in to be retested. Turns out it was all a false positive test and I was fine. But those 6 weeks were horrific. On New Year's Eve 2019, my alcoholic piece of ex-husband barricaded us in the bedroom and beat the shit out of me for hours. He was wasted and fumbling with his gun the whole time. Held it to my head a few times. When I finally couldn't take anymore and literally thought I was going to die at the hands of that asshole, I bolted for the back door. It was locked. The 2 seconds I fumbled with the handle trying to unlock it felt like forever. He jumped up from the bed to chase me, and when I got the door open, I fell down the 5 or 6 steps on the other side of it. Fractured my leg, but thank goodness at that very moment, my neighbor was walking into the backyard to see if I wanted to come over, because they were in her backyard partying. When I got away, he held my dog hostage until my other neighbor, that had walked up to see what the commotion was, realized what was going on, and confronted him with a knife in his hand, and ended up stabbing my ex in the side while they were wrestling around on the ground, but managed to get the gun from him. They both were arrested that night, but the neighbor's charges were eventually dropped for self-defense. I really thought I was going to die that night. I was absolutely terrified. Adrenaline is a motherfucker though, and is the only reason I was finally able to twist free from his grasp and bolt for the door. I dated a guy and we got serious fast. Soon thereafter, he became verbally and mentally and at times physically abusive toward me. I finally got him to move out. He stalked me, I got a restraining order, and I moved. Blocked him on all social outlets, and on my cell phone. Fast forward a few years later, he murdered his girlfriend in broad daylight. I went over to a now ex-friend's house one summer to hang out and play on his VR headset. I played it for a while and then turned it off. We were talking and he pulled out a gun. I stared at the gun thinking, this is it. My parents are going to get a phone call saying I'm dead. He pulled the trigger and a flame came out. He started laughing, seeing how scared I was. Even though I know now it was a fake gun, it honestly traumatized me. Back when I was a junkie, my best friend and myself were told to go to some dealer's house we've never been to before, and when we pulled up, we walked to the front door, knocked, and the guy opened the door and held a sawed-off shotgun to my face. A couple years later, he was arrested for robbery and arson. By far one of the scariest times of my life. I'm so happy to be sober now. I live in Kiev. A few weeks ago, I woke up at 4 a.m. to explosions. Not that unusual. But this time, I could hear the drones buzzing right over my head. I live on the 5th floor and didn't have time to go to a shelter, and all I do was sit in the corridor and pray. My doors and windows were shaking with the force of explosions, and I could just hear so many of them flying around, I truly thought it would be the night I'd die. A lot of people assume everyone here is most afraid of the bombs. But for me, they're scary, but not as scary as drones. It's over relatively quickly when they hit, but the drones, you can hear and feel them buzzing around for a target and exploding for hours, and the anxiety is unmatched.
It's truly disturbing and frightening. Over the last couple of years, there have been a few incidents with female runners that have been assaulted and a couple murdered. So it's a scary time. And, it's an activity that you should be able to do and not have to worry about. There are trails near my home, both paved and wooded. And I have a lot of female friends, they won't run alone unless it's like a main road. And that's not good, man. You should be able to do what you want and feel safe. So, sorry. I'm glad you made it out okay, but, whew, wild.
June last year I was running. Sunday morning, 9:30, broad daylight. On my way back home I saw a car parked on the corner facing me. I stopped a little way off because I could sense something wasn't right. The minute I stopped, 2 guys got out of the car and chased me. I turned and ran as fast as I could and screamed. It is difficult to run and scream at the same time. I'm a decent runner, but they caught me quickly. One grabbed a hold of my pants and the other put his hands around my upper body. I made an absolute scene. Screaming, kicking, fighting. They told me to shut up. I carried on making a scene. I ended up being knocked over in the middle of the road. They touched me all over, asking where my phone was. I yelled that I didn't have it. The one grabbed my running watch. I held onto it, and he ended up biting my hand. I let go. I saw the one guy had a gun. Someone else in the car drove up to where it was happening. The 2 guys got into the car and fled. I was still lying on the ground. Spent some time in hospital, extremely strong painkillers, anti-inflammatories, x-rays, and a lot. I lost the feeling and movement in 2 of my fingers due to the bite. They have since come back after extensive physiotherapy, concussion, and serious jaw pain. Couldn't eat properly for a while. Had to be on ARVs for 6 weeks. They were seriously strong, and I couldn't do much during that time. People did come out, but they came out too late. It happened so incredibly quickly. It is so important to not think of what-if situations. However, it can be hard. What if I had run closer and they got me into the car? I probably wouldn't be here now. I battled to do anything for the next while. Couldn't leave my house. Eventually, I made myself, as I knew the mental block would worsen, I made myself run down the road again. I ran during a time when the road was busy. I do run with people, however, I also enjoy running alone. That shit stays with you. I'm extremely paranoid now. Sucks. I now carry pepper spray and a taser when I run. When I was 6, my stepdad moved my mother and I to Brooklyn, New York, and my mom rode the public bus with me to my new school a few times. I saw a store that I was familiar with, and she thought I was ready to ride it by myself. When the stop came up, the store was closed and had the metal thing on their door. I looked at the bus driver and my heart was racing because I was so confused. He nodded with reassurance, and I had no choice but to get off. I started walking and thought that I was going to get lost and not ever be found. I walked the way I thought was right and eventually ended up at the school. I was 6 and from Indiana. Nearly drowned. When swimming at the beach with my friend who doesn't swim, I decided to go a little further out because I wanted to swim a bit beyond the edge of the water. When I was getting a bit tired, I decided to start swimming back to shore, but I noticed I wasn't really moving, so I decided to drop down to try and touch the seabed and realized there was nothing there. Tried to swim again and was noticing I was now moving further out into the ocean. Again, tried to go down to hopefully hold my breath and run to the surface, but still there was no seabed when I went down. I realized I was in trouble. Yelled out to my friend who didn't hear me, and by this point I'm panicked. I yelled out as loud as I could, "Help!" And I don't know how fast that lifeguard was running or swimming. I noticed him starting to run, and moments later he was in front of me with a paddleboard, telling me I got caught in a riptide. I had barely any energy left at this point, and then he told me there's a big wave coming in behind us, asking me if I'm ready, and I promptly said no. Wave crashed over us, and he helped me get to shore the rest of the way. Dude saved my life. But still to this day, when I go to the beach, I'm too afraid to go too far out into the water. You ever been the victim of road rage perpetuated by a semi-truck driver on a 2-lane highway in the middle of a deserted mountainous area at midnight during a hailstorm? I literally couldn't see 10 feet in front of me. The semi-truck was tailgating me and honking, and there was nowhere to pull over. I admit that I was going like 10 miles an hour under the speed limit because I'm not being suicidal enough to drive 60 through the mountains during a hailstorm in the pitch black, but this crazy-ass trucker decided it was a good idea to pull up beside me, so he was driving the wrong side of the road and literally tried to drive me off the road and down the side of the mountain. I couldn't pull off anywhere, and there was no phone reception, so I just had to keep going and pray he left me alone. He eventually got bored of me and drove away. I pulled over the first chance I got and just cried. Years ago, around the time of midnight, I was on the couch watching Mark Kiplier videos while my oldest sister was on the other side doing homework. I hear a blood-curdling feminine scream, like the type you hear in movies. I pause the video and take out my earbuds, wondering if the scream was from the video or real life. I wait a good few minutes and look over to my sister, who doesn't look scared. I then resume to watch the video, and later on I hear another scream. I pause the video again and ask my sister if she heard that. She's frozen with her hands hovering over the keyboard, and she just quietly says that she did hear that. The both of us sat there, not moving, and just waited to listen. Again, another scream, but this time they're crying, "Oh God, help me." The screaming and crying sound so close, like it could be right on our doorstep. I quietly say, I'm going to call the police, and go to the home phone to dial 911. I give them my information and tell them to hurry. I really didn't want to look outside the window in case I saw something that I couldn't unsee. Instead of looking out the front window, straight to out doorstep, I take a small peek to the other window to the street. It's all black. No streetlights are on. An hour passes, and I hear the woman scream again, mixed with crying. I call the police again for them to come, and that I'm scared. I should mention that the police station isn't even 10 minutes away from our house. I never heard any sirens, no flashing lights, no return call. To this day, I have no idea if it was a genuine person in danger or a break-in attempt. Thinking about that day always gives me shivers. I used to fight Wildfire.
My third year on the job, I was given the keys to a pump truck. First of all, driving a pump truck on treacherous, recently burned, skinny mountain trails with a truck half full of water, and the goddamn sloshing water in the tank is threatening to yeet you down a mountain at a mountain's notice. Like, just day-to-day work sucked and felt like my life was on edge. But I investigated a smoky plume, and it was a fell tree that had hella smolders in it, and it was spreading quickly. So I ran down the mountainside, got my hose, ran back up and got to work. But when I blasted one area, it caused a huge branch to fall, and suddenly I was surrounded by flames. I was in the center of a huge bonfire. I focused up, remembered my training, got myself out from all of it, and as I was rolling up my hoses, I was like, yeah, no, never again. This one was not as scary at the time, but is in retrospect. Year coordinator for year 11 wanted to talk to me. Brought me to a small office that was always open but had no windows. I walk in and he closes the door and proceeds to ask me questions about a particular incident where his friend physically assaulted me. He wanted to know why I told my mom about his buddy hitting me, and also wanted to know, are you, one of those sissies? I blew up at him and started tearing into him verbally. I was furious. He had no business asking me shit like that, and only made me wonder because his actual office has windows. Here's the clincher. He wasn't my year coordinator. I was in grade 9. So many unanswered questions with enough speculation. Catholic schools. I hope they're both dead. Oof. I would piss on their graves with zero remorse. Quite the opposite. I broke up with a guy of just 6 weeks, and he went full-scale psycho on me when I was 20, and my parents were out of the country, so I was on my own. He wouldn't stop phoning me while I was at work. I had to switch my phone off in the end. Even my colleagues were worried about me going home. I did a drive-by of my house to check out if he was about, and he was waiting down a dark alleyway near my house for me to park my car and walk to the house. So I kept driving and stopped around the corner to phone a friend who said they would come and stay with me that night. They were about 10 to 15 minutes away, so I waited 10 minutes and drove back to the house. By the time I'd parked my car, he was walking toward me, so I didn't have time to get into the house. He started getting physically violent, smashed my phone. I created a lot of noise so that neighbors would hear there was a problem. No one did anything, but it was enough of a deterrent for him to think twice, so he backed off, walked off down the road, tried punching a window out of my car. I got inside the house, switched my SIM to my old handset, and he kept phoning, and then he started giving me death threats. So I called the police. He was found in the pub at the bottom of my road, getting drunk, obviously planning to return later that night. The police got tired of him on that occasion. It did continue, threats, etc., even when my parents returned from holiday, at which point my dad stepped in and phoned his dad. His dad had a small business and he worked for him. His dad wasn't aware of anything that was going on, so my dad filled him in and told him to get control of his son with a threat to his business if things continued. Never heard anything from them again. But it was a good year before I could see that type of work ban without my heart racing and just total fear response in case it was him.